share with you today is the considered opinion of some of the most senior CISOs in the country today. All right. So with that, I'd like to invite Felix on the stage.
See, basically, part of my presentation relates to what was presented at the advisory council thing. So there are a few slides which don't really relate to the topic, but I felt it's crucial for CISOs, especially in security professionals, to be aware of that. The first thing is there are two things that have completely changed or are changing security as never before. They're game changers, and that is this. Homomorphic encryption has now come of age. 2009, Craig Garrett discovered, invented homographic encryption. 2013, the team from, he's an IBM researcher. 2013, it was actually made practical, and IBM has got the patent. What is this homographic encryption? Imagine today what would be the situation as far as security is concerned if there was no public and private key encryption, right? It is that encryption which has enabled a whole lot of computing, a whole lot of secure activities. But we still have problems about cloud, about privacy, about big data, etc., etc. All of them in one go will get sorted out when finally homographic encryption starts getting out into commercial, because homographic encryption allows you to process encrypted data. You don't need to decrypt at all. That means you have encrypted data kept somewhere. You do all the processing on the encrypted data without, as though it is a decrypted data. You can do Google searches, putting an encrypted search key. Everything will be actually processed in encrypted form. Therefore, its loss or breach will not make any difference. Watch out for this homographic encryption. The second game changer, right, is what we call indicators of compromise. Today, signature-based, detection capability is absolutely outdated, which all of you all are aware. So how do you, and you can't predict today, right? If protection is not there, the whole security is moving into detection, right? Now, the problem is even detection is extremely, extremely difficult, because as you're aware, the Verizon 2013 report says that about 89% of the organizations were breached, and of them 80% did not know they were breached, and those who got to know, the 20% got to know from law enforcement agencies, YouTube, or customers when they filed for liability, right? It's extremely bad there. You're getting hit, you're getting breached, but you can't detect. That's when these indicators of compromise have come in to help. In fact, this was actually the whole concept of indicators of a compromise came up with a company called Mandiant, now taken over by FireEye. There's a person, Keith Mandia, who is the founder of Mandiant. Over the last 7 or 8 years, where they have actually investigated over 4,000 of the largest enterprises of the world, like forensics enterprises. And they've actually categorized that when breaches happen, what are the kind of indicators that are there. And that particular indicators eventually got matured now, and they've come up with, it's kind of become a signature where these are available in XML form, right? And it's there in open IOC thing. You can download out there, run it in your networks. If there are breaches in your networks, these indicators of compromise will actually throw up indications that yes, you have been breached, because it doesn't match with what is existing in your network vis-a-vis this particular IOC. These two are real game changers. Having said this, I'll just cover the 6 core areas of RSA which was there last week. They talked about cloud located big data security analytics. Big data security analytics is the thing. But how many enterprises can really put in a big data platform, link it with their SIEM? It's extremely costly, even for large enterprises. The way out which was being discussed, and Cisco, Symantec, McAfee, Qualys, and a whole lot of other things, in all their presentations, in their thing, they said, let's push the thing, big data platform out there in the cloud. Enterprises will send the thing. They're also talking, there are ways and means of how you can send the data from the enterprise into these clouds for big data analytics. But very importantly, the big data analytics that happen in the cloud, right, will interrelate the activities that not only happen within one enterprise, but with a whole lot of enterprises, giving much more punch to the analytics. But these are things which I'll just rush through to come to my thing. Second is privacy was a big thing, especially with the NSA aspect. Data sovereignty, was discussed at length. Big data mining, became a huge issue. You might, have a PII not actually getting thrown up in a particular table or a thing, but when linked with a number of other tables, profiles that get generated, actually, given a whole lot of PII stuff. How do you prevent that thing? Here, actually they said, this is a problem, solutions are not there, it's still working, how to figure this thing out. Education and skilling was another major, huge shortfall of security people. As you are aware, even in India, in the next 5 years, we need 500,000 people. We're just about 17,000, and that too is the, nobody all of us, we know 17,000, we don't have that kind of people. But that's what some of the figures wrote in the next 5 years, India needs 500,000 people. Similarly, US requires 1 million people. Everyone in the world requires this. There are no systematic approaches to preparing professionals to come and practice this field in enterprises. That's a major issue. Visibility became another thing. How do you detect, right? Detection and visibility where SIM, security intelligence platforms were discussed at length, but in the cloud. In fact, RSA has released on 3rd of March their service itself, cloud-based security intelligence platform, and they've already tied up a whole lot of partners. So enterprises can actually avail of these intelligence platforms in the cloud without having to spend money. Metrics was a big issue. Cybersecurity, critical infrastructure prediction was always there. But very importantly, now I come to where thing. Internet of Things, right? And its security was the, I would say, plum on the cake. A lot of discussion was on IoT. Out of the 20 or 19 odd keynotes, 6 of them talked about IoT, right? All of us are aware of Internet of Things, but then generally somewhere in the back of our mind, okay, some device talking to another device, some machine to machine. It's a big cloud of ambiguity there, but we know something is happening out there. I want to clear that fog in this presentation, and then link that to how a CISO is getting completely affected, and CIOs are running helter-skelter because of this. Because Internet of Things is here now. It's here. It's not an idea. It's very much a part of our lives. It's not going to happen next year. It already happened 2 years back, right? And there are a huge amount of vulnerabilities. This is just a Gartner definition. I don't want to go. It's a network of physical things and access from the thing. But here are what the industry leaders are saying. There's no stopping it. Financial rewards. Enterprises are getting into it in a big way because lots of money in it, right? They're talking about benefits that are so profound that it's never ever experienced in the history of mankind, right? That's the kind of profound, prolific, huge change that IoT is not going to bring in. It's already doing. It's there, right? $4.5 trillion in 2020, right, is the forecasted value that this will create. Last year, up to last year, 71% of all equipment and devices that were sold were IoT and related. Right? It is not the normal things that we think are getting sold. It's there. It's this thing. By 2017, machine-to-machine communication will increase by 3-fold, traffic by 20-fold. 15 billion devices will get into the thing by 2015. 50 billion by 2020. So very importantly, in this slide, notice one thing, that it's a hockey stick race. It's not a gradual thing. And what triggered that upward movement is the rapid adoption of digital technologies, mobile, cloud, big data, social and embedded devices, and mobility, the thing. That was what brought that hockey stick up there, bringing in the era of IoT, bringing in digitalization and digital business. What has, that's where I will lead to where we are, how we are landing up at digital business, what is digital business, and what are we got to do about it, and then cover what is IoT. In this, note these three things, because this is the crucial part. Digital technologies, digitalization, digital business. So you see the thing, digital technologies are the foundation which enable, we all know what are the nexus of forces that we're talking about. Nexus of forces were enabled by certain other things. But now the nexus of forces has enabled the Internet of Things. And both of these together are what is unleashing the digital business era. And it is crucial for organizations today to adopt digital technologies. Otherwise, they will be, history. Now, the digital technologies that are adopted by organizations actually have to get implemented, have to get deployed. They get deployed either in channel strategies, what is called as digital marketing, or they get implemented by IT departments, for operational efficiencies. But that is not what brings in digital business. Digital business fundamentally means applying digital technologies to the very DNA of the business, to the core of the business, right? And that core, when it is put in out there, it brings, and the organization uses, right, unique combinations of digital and physical resources. That's why IoT is enabling this. And it brings in huge amount of customer experience. Say for example, never before in the history of business, right, has a transaction extended beyond the sale. Every business transaction with the customer ends at sale. Up to, early 2000, a business would sell a product or service and say goodbye, right? Here's a hammer, good luck with your nail, right? That was all. And before that, the business would do a whole lot of sales thing, enable the customer with giving them comparative things in e-commerce channels, etc. But it all ends at the giving of the product or service. Eventually, they realize that customers, when they buy these products, they've got some pain points. So customer service came up, Department of Customer Service. So you had the transaction and one little bit of probe into customer service. But that's all vintage now. With IoT, you can right now digitize consumption. There is post-transaction relationship which you can have across the life and build trust. How, for example, right? Each customer who buys a product or service buys it because they want to fulfill a personal goal, right? A person who buys a hammer, he's not buying a hammer for its own sake. He's buying the hammer to like, drive a nail. That goal is driving of the nail. Businesses should like handhold them not only by selling them the hammer, but like taking them right up to like, when they put the nail in the like board. How do they do that? Or say, for example, like I was talking to some people, right, yesterday about a golfer who wants to like, get a better like, length of his drive. He buys a new club, right? If he buys a new club and he's left on his own, like, it ends the transaction. But today with the Internet of Things, with sensors that are embedded in clubs there, this relationship continues because when he's bought this club with sensors in it, when he swings out there, when he hits out there, all of them is being sensed up and pushed up into the cloud. Analytics like, coming into the thing, and the summarized information which handholds him, right, is pushed into his iOS phone and Android phone. So he gets his particular thing, he actually sees how his swing is. What should he do better to like, reach his goal of like increasing his thing? So there is a constant relationship which did not end with the sale of things. That's the paradigm shift which like, digital technologies and IoT has brought in. That's where like businesses are actually moving into it, right? Now, in this thing, what is the role of the CIO and CIO and CISO, right? Very clearly, Internet of Things is going to like push in and pump in so much of information that like, like they say, it actually makes decimal systems like, redundant because you can't put that many zeros, right? Even these words like say Bronto bite, like many of us not even heard, but then that's the kind of like, words that like, will become like common, right? Now, given this huge amount of information, it's literally a tsunami which is like going to hit us, right? What happens to that data when it comes in out there? The data now, which is like landed up, has got two phases. It's two sides it has got. It's got a risk perspective and it's got a value perspective. Risk because of data management, archival, privacy, regulatory, a whole lot of like, issues related to the risk aspect. Value, you create information strategies, digital channel strategies, like, relations, etc., which bring in value, right? These are the two sides of that humongous amount of data that is there. The problem is, who manages these two aspects, right? That's where the crux is, right? Today, the CIO does not manage it, right? CIO today, by enterprises world over, they're only expected with a few things. They need to know technology, right? Architecture and technology. They need to have change management, project management, vendor skills, leadership, financial budgeting, and people management skills. This is all that they need to have, right? They do not have any background. CIOs do not have background of data management, right? Leave alone like creating information strategies, right? And secondly, CIOs like, work with business for managing and using data, but a CIO knows that this data is not owned by him. It's created by the business. Business knows like, what its best value and context is. So for him, priority is like, lower. He is like stuck in his standardization, productivity, and operationalization. He is not moving out from the back office. All these things right now are in the front office. And then, therefore, there is also, all of you all must have seen this thing, huge amount of clash between the CIOs and CMOs. See, because their whole approach and what is expected of them is 180 degrees in this thing. CIO is trying to standardize, CMO is trying to personalize, create like for each differences for each individual customer, completely different. One is like, bringing down and optimizing cost. Other one is like, trying to like raise revenue. So CIO is not really managing the thing. Who does this management of that huge data? there are like clearly this. Risk is being looked after by this like, a lot of like titles with overlapping like, thing. Privacy, risk officer, CISO, risk manager, head governance, GRC, they are looking at that like risk part. Value part, CMO partially because of the digital, they like, infusing digital technology and channel strategies, etc. That's all, partially. Otherwise, really no one is doing because this thing is still catching on, right? So how does an enterprise really create value when there is really nobody managing this? So enterprises today, right, world over, have like taken a step of bringing all these titles under the chief data officer and the value under chief digital officer, right? And this is like not theory, because this is the statistics as of last month. 17% of larger organizations will have a chief data officer, up from 7% in 2013. It is doubled in the last 1 year. CIOs need to readjust their job role expectations because they will actually get pushed out further into the back end, right? And 25% of the large global organizations will have appointed chief data officers and 20% chief digital officers. This is a reality. Now, given this reality, CIOs are running helter-skelter in all these big companies, right, to enhance their role. Otherwise, like, they're there. So they're trying to, like, quickly occupy the chief digital officer roles. They're rushing there, right? Because if they don't, they're sitting ducks like on infrastructure. Oh, what are the CISOs doing? That's the question, right? CISOs, now what they are doing or what they need to do is, I've just taken one case example, live data from LinkedIn on an advertisement for CISO, okay? What is the world looking from a CISO? This is it's about 50 days old because 5 days back I downloaded this from the LinkedIn, right? They're talking about like some clear requirements from CISO. First and foremost, we see the thing. It's called Information Security and Digital Officer, right? Stroke CISO. He must be an expert in digital and security technologies. So we had talked about digital technology, mobile, social, big data, embedded thing, and cloud. He needs to be an expert there. He not only protects and defends, but also enables next generation approaches to cutting edge technology. He needs to be a thought leader in these digital technologies. If you look at his responsibilities, he needs to be an industry expert in digital, again, underline digital and security technologies. He represents digital and information security expert to the external customers. Collaborate with digital and business technology leadership to develop long-term plans. And what are the requirements along with that normal, like, typical CISO requirements of security and firewalls and 27,000 PCI DSS, etc., right? He also needs to have experience in next generation digital and information security. Needs to manage a significant digital and information security function. That's where the CISO is. Like, and we are not talking what is going to happen. We are talking about what already happened. So the question, like, which needs to be actually contemplated in one's mind is, what am I doing, right? Am I still like, on this like firewall rules, right? Or am I looking at the large picture, right? Otherwise, like, I will like start reporting to the chief data officer, right? I need to be the chief data officer, right? That's where, like, you need to be looking at. And this, I've just made this thing, right? There's this backend enterprise support infra where CIO is now sitting out there if he doesn't enhance his business skill. Will you want to be a back office CISO, right? Working along with the CIO, or a front office CISO who's like looking at like customer facing infra and BYOD. See, like, BYOD also I put it in a different color because not many CISOs are really looking at that. But here, CIO, CMO, and the Chief Digital Officer, CISO will be working with them. CISO, or if he eventually becomes a Chief Data Officer or whatever title is given to him, right? He will work with CIO, CMO, and the Chief Digital Officer. And the world digital business is actually outward looking, right? When he moves there and he becomes a digital CISO, which is where all of us should be, right? That CISO will be working more often than not with the CMO and the Chief Digital Officer, very less with the CIO. And information security will be across, but then he will have to focus on digital technology security, right? And he needs to pick up that. And that, in effect, is what is my message, and I'll go ahead as to some of the digital technology security. Okay, now that's a role, digital business role. Now IoT, and where is like CISO's issues there, and what's really happening out there? IoT is getting triggered by three things. Mass adoption. When I say mass adoption, really mass adoption. Today we talk of mobile. Mobile came up in the community. IM came out in the communities. Everything that is creeped in and taken over enterprises started with communities and consumers. IoT has already been well established there, right? They're like enabling technologies. We'll just cover quickly on that. And what are the implementable business models which are there? Very clear models are there. Organizations already creating. Then, of course, there are threats and vulnerabilities where, CISO comes in, and then there are cybersecurity issues in this thing. But what is mass adoption? Mass adoption can happen if there are buyouts by large enterprises. That's the first requirement for, mass adoption, which brings in this excitement among people. Oh, if I create a startup, right, I can get bought over. The whole impetus to startups and these things are when large organizations buy them up. That's one requirement. And then they need to have the capability by availability of low-cost boards, sensors and processors to create those those internet infrastructure. There should be revenue for them, productivity or entertainment opportunity, and affordable deployment ecosystem. If all these are there, and let me tell you something, all of them are there, very much there, and they're there for the last 3-4 years. And it's here. Big buyouts, as I said, gives boost to rapid growth. Here's one example. January, Google, $3.2 billion it is paid for a IoT sensor company, right? That's the kind of impetus that the IoT companies and startups are getting. This thing. Second, availability of low-cost boards. How many of you all have heard of Arduino? It's available there. The sensors are 400 rupees. Boards are less than 1,000 rupees. It's Flipkart. This I picked up from Flipkart and I put out here. Order from Flipkart, you'll get all these things where you can actually create these things at home. Low-cost sensors, lithium. And sensors, there's sensors for everything. You have these boards out there. These are some of the examples. You can get sensors for gas, right? You take it and you plug it into the thing. You can get for events. You get for smart metering. You get for video cameras. All these are sensors available. 400 rupees, 1,000 rupees max, 800. You have these boards out there and you have these sensors put out there and thing. Then processors, they need to process, board, sensors, processors. Raspberry Pi, many of you all have heard of Raspberry Pi. These are all 4 years old, $30, full-fledged credit card-like size computing machines, right? With Wi-Fi, with a whole lot of things. Supports Linux, $30. But January, Intel has come up with something which is even smaller, right? An entire computer which supports not only Linux, but many other operating systems, including iOS and Android, all in that small little chip, right? Now the thing is, here you have boards, you have sensors, you have processors, right? All these, and then the buyouts are happening. There's like excitement out there. But then when startups like bring all these things together, they still need to have a deployment ecosystem. They need to have cloud and all that. So then, no, before that, the third thing was revenue. There has to be some kind of thing. There's a whole lot of revenue. Google Glass is there. Wearable, things are thing. Now here, this is a startup which has come. They've hit the sky as far as the valuation is concerned, because this tile which is out there is so much in demand that you can't buy it, you have to pre-order it. Like now the orders are like in summer 2014, right? Orders have to be things. Because the manufacturing of those things cannot really keep up with the thing. That much of consumption and consumerization of these things are happening out there. $20 is this particular thing. Now this is another thing, like I said, social cause. All of us have heard of WESDA. WESDA is very early warning, fire system. Fundamentally, this technology picks up, if there's a fire, smoke, one particle in billions of particles of thing, it can pick up that. So effectively you get early warning of a possible fire about 2 to 3 hours before the actual thing picks up, and therefore you can take corrective actions. That's WESDA. They brought in a WESDA equivalent thing in earthquakes, where the government there said earthquakes you need to pick up the tremors. Only thing is that right now that the things are put at different places. If the density of these sensors is expanded to meet, and it's available at lot of places in the earth, in every house, even a small tremor can be picked up and you get much longer advance notice of a impending earthquake. So what have they done? They have created these things. It's available for something like $30. This equipment, you can pick up and put it into your house, there. It's like Ethernet thing and Wi-Fi related. It all picks up. So anyone who does a social cause by spending $30 and picks up and puts it in his house, right? He's actually helping the world as such to pick up tremors at the thing. Even the tiniest of tremors, it gets picked up, goes to the cloud, goes to big data analytics platforms there, and that figures out what is the state of earthquakes, this thing. Then in San Francisco, anyone been there off late, you would have found this particular thing. As you're driving, my cab driver knew precisely whether he could park or not. He was using this thing. He told me this SF park thing. Seeing this, I went and downloaded this thing. It's a crazy thing. You know precisely where is the parking, when is it going to get free, right? Everything is out there, internet. Toothbrush, it's an internet connected toothbrush introduced in January, right? This particular toothbrush figures out through sensors exactly how you're brushing your tooth, whether you're leaving tartar. Pushes into the internet, all the analysis is done and it comes out into your mobile phone, there, gives you a thing. Plus it links up with dentists and other things, and it's a whole ecosystem on a toothbrush, right? So that's the models, revenue model. Now how do they deploy this particular thing, this whole thing, Exively, it's a cloud service for Internet of Things, right? Extremely easy. This is how it's got like directory, data services, and business services. You just link up your thing. So whether you're using Arduino or Raspberry, just link up. 50,000, 48,000 rupees per year is the entire thing. So create your internet, and that's what I'm saying. It's now consumerized. People are creating their own things, with these low-cost things, plugging onto these cloud services at dead, cheap rates. That's the momentum, right? And therefore, it's a wave that will has already come into enterprises, and we as and CISOs and security people need to pay really strong attention to this. What about the enabling technologies? Very clearly, as we said, nexus of forces had enabled the Internet of Things, and then the digital business. Here the service platforms are the ones that mobile, cloud, etc. Down below is a sensor, microprocessor, and chip. Those are three core things. That's it. So I've just put an example of riding of a cycle. Sensor senses the physical environment, his speed, etc., location. Microprocessor there will process that information, come out with display speed, distance, averages. Networking chip will share that information, right, with a Bluetooth link on his smartphone out into the internet. And that's where the service platform comes up. And now the cloud with big data and other things start working on the thing. You will not only get the speed and location, but a whole lot of history, things comparison with past reps. If you was going up a slope, what was the speed, downs, all kinds of analytics, is available. This is a thin stack, right? But the basic enabling technologies are 5 of them. Networking, you see, because for IoT you need to have range, bandwidth, cost, low battery consumption. So you have these chips, right, which, wireless networking technologies, low power, right? Then you have sensors, which are optimized for data management. Now the low power wireless, the wireless things, I'll just take you to those things, but before that, I'll give you sensors, normal IT systems aggregate information, store it, analyze it. You cannot do that in IoT for the sole reason that transmission of data consumes a lot of power and battery goes down. Therefore, there has to be distributed processing, and only minimal transmission is sent out on the thing. So that kind of optimized data management is done, microprocessors, embedded sensors. Now, if you look at this thing, this quick thing, low power, 3 types of IoT networks, personal, this thing, where you have Bluetooth low energy, and 802.1.15.6. Then you have Zigbee and -7 for the longer range and application specific. Sensor, tiny dB, etc. I don't want to go too much into this, just to give you awareness that all these are there. There are these embedded OS platforms like TinyOS, Areos, etc. This is little interesting. How do you store? There are innovative battery forms, thin film printed batteries in the cloth, high power density, this thing, and wireless charging, etc. Then you have, of course, implementable business model, information. There are 7 models of IoT that are used. Informational, advertising, delivery, usage, etc. Right? So I'll just cover the 3. Here there are information, you have 2D barcode, if a business wants to give information, right? Once one takes a camera shot of that 2D barcode, it goes up into the internet, you get recipes. This Hormet does that. Manuals, tax manuals, even in India you have tax manuals which keep getting updated. You put the barcode thing and then you get the latest updation out there. That's information. Advertising and promotional, which all of you all are aware. This is delivery content. You have e-papers there where you just stuck on anything. Here this is a medical box which gives what is the dosage, etc. if he does not like take the pill, it starts flashing. So the content can actually be pushed onto this e-paper and is displayed. There are other models which I don't want to go. Now coming to the threats. Threats are huge. Cisco, like, in March has offered 300K, like, bounty for, like, security apps, like, thing. Lot of, like, issues. This camera TrendNet, like, actually, like, got hacked. People, like, had used these cameras at home. It was available, like, anybody could, like, see them. Philips bulbs, highly hackable. Smart meters, like, getting hacked. The tire pressure monitoring systems. Most of the cars today are, like, are Internet of Things, basically, right? They are getting, like, hacked. This, you all must have heard, like, the refrigerator was used to send spam in January thing. So the thing is, as far as CISO is concerned, is the internet too big, too difficult to, like, thing? Forrester says, yes, it's actually, like, it's a new potential for things. So what is the CISO really going to do? By the way, like, before I go there, India has been, like, really a pioneer in, like, IoT security. The first international conference was held, I was not aware of this, and, I believe a lot of security people were not aware. But the fact of the thing is, first international conference was held in India, right? These are the three bodies which are making security, like, protocols and technology. IoT is a EU IoT architecture, then IoT Eclipse org, MQTT, and the Internet of Things Europe. These three are making, like IoTA has got a mission, plus they have made a reference architecture framework, which talks about various things. I'll just quick rush. They're talking about how your endpoints, interactions, and ecosystems, how do you, like, it's a reference architecture which is available, right? These MQ telemetry transport, they've come up with their own, like, thing for data at rest. How do you, like, protect that? Data in transit, how do you protect, right? And time and place is a big issue because, like, in these sensors require to have correct time and correct place information here. Like, local batteries cannot be used because it uses a lot of power. Like, so GPS jammers and all are used to, like, to obfuscate place. How do you take care of that? That is where these protocols, like, come up. And then you have the first framework in March 2013, which is now actually gone up to even become, it's been sent to the BSI, to the ISO organization, right, which will become eventually come out as a standard. But there are 10 areas that they are talking about in this particular thing. You can actually download this report which actually talks, which will then, you will find it as an ISO thing coming. The law, loss of control, health related, lock-in, etc., traceability. So there's a lot of activities happening in this, right? Now, having said this thing, there is also a very clear, like, threat of cybersecurity aspect. Shodan is a website which most of the hackers are using for, like, finding out, like, the critical infrastructure of hacking. It's called the Google for hackers. You can find out everything about, like, SCADA systems and, like, critical infrastructures. So, and also it's very important for all security people to actually, like, use this and know this particular tool. Right? Now, having said this thing, just a quick one. Too many people are using too many different terminologies of cybersecurity. Some people, like, use, like, even an antivirus, like, policy as a cybersecurity policy for malicious code. Everyone is using his own concept of, like, thing. There was complete confusion globally as to what does cybersecurity really entail here. So Gartner, Forrester, they all got together and they said we need to define cybersecurity once and for all so that all security professionals and government officials and any other stakeholder have clear idea what it really means, right? And it actually means the use of information security, operational technology security, IT security, tools and techniques for achieving regulatory compliance, defending assets and compromising the assets. That means it's got an offensive part also. But the important thing is there's information security, IT security, and operational technology security, three different aspects. But like, what is this operational technology security? Right? That's the thing. Now the operational technology and IT, like they're like, now completely like converging. Okay? While the deliverable of IT was information that can be used for anything, the deliverable of operational technologies is a change of state, right? Using information, right? Which is where like you have all these like, industrial control systems plus Internet of Things. They all use this particular thing. And these are converging, right? And there are a whole lot of systems now available with converged systems. Like we had a discussion yesterday on like, the propensity of CISOs to ignore anything that is not like, IT security or information security that needs to change in the digital business world. Like they discarded physical security and said physical security doesn't come in our thing, despite the fact that physical security and information security are completely like converged. Physical security becomes extremely important in the Internet of Things world because it's physical things that are like got intelligence now. So there is on one end physical security, one is operational technology security, and information security should be under the scope of like, every like CISO's view. Going forward, just as an example, if there is a government emergency like, response office, and if there's a huge amount of accident, right? With an Internet of Things, they can find out a hospital, and what are the equipment state in that hospital. But if they also have Internet of people, they will know which are the doctors available, what is the state, whether they're traveling, which are the nurses, which nurses talk, what are the doctor specialization. That comes out with the Internet of people. If there's the Internet of places, they will know which are the hospitals, how many beds, all those aspects. And then Internet of information, where like, they actually get to know like, the past histories of like, of these injured people. So these four Internet things, again, when they interact, right, you get Internet of everything. That's where the world, like Google, all like, Gartner, RSA, in fact, they were talking about more about the Internet of everything, not just the Internet of Things, right? In fact, the Cisco strategic officer, this lady, an Indian lady, warrior, she in her talk like clearly said that like, I'm giving the CISO, this Chris Young, a whole lot of money for securing Internet of everything, right? Now this like is where will hit us in the next 2-3 years, right? So what is happening? All these things are increasing business value tremendously, but it's also increasing threats and vulnerabilities tremendously. And what these two things have done is it's like put in a huge expectation on the CISO, right? Now it's up to the CISO and security professionals to either live up or like go back. Thank you. Any questions?
No questions. Amazing.
Looks like we are coming back to that cycle. In last 12 years, a lot of things were pushed to servers and the cloud. Now we are coming back to the tiny things.
Subra, the thing was that embedded systems have always been there. Only thing, those embedded systems were in factories, were in industrial systems. Yeah. Now these embedded systems have become they've got consumerized. That's the difference. That's why it's come into business. And business now finds value in it. And that's the difference.